Okay, in this next example, we are going to isolate an object by combining several of our selection tools. And very often you'll find that with your more detailed selections, especially, by combining your selection tools, you can more efficiently create that selection. The object we're going to select in this example is this woman's hat. We're going to create a selection around only her hat, not to remove her hat, but rather so we can duplicate her hat. We want to create multiple copies of this woman's hat so that we can change the color of each of the copies. And we're doing that so that we can set this image up as an interactive image. If you notice over here on the left-hand side, we have these buttons. And as I roll over each of the buttons, the woman's hat changes to the corresponding button's color. And that's because we created a selection around this hat and then colorized this version blue, and then colorized this one obviously red and then green. And then using the swap image behavior in Fireworks, we were able to create an interactive way to preview this woman in the different colored hats. And you've probably seen similar sites or effects on some automobile sites where you can preview your car in a different color or swap out the wheels for some custom wheels and some upgrades and things like that. So that's sort of the premise we're using here. And also, we did use, you'll notice later on in the CD, if you haven't already seen it, we used the same example in the vector example. So we actually used two different ways to achieve the same effect by using completely different techniques. We'll use the vector mask tools to create the selection around her hat and then duplicate them and then colorize them and set them up in the same way. So it'll be a good way for you to see two completely different approaches to the same effect in Fireworks. And as a bonus, we did include at the end of the CD a QuickTime lesson on how we set this whole interactive image up with the swap image behavior. So after you complete the selections, you can go over there to the end of the CD and take a look at it just to see how we set this up and follow as a step-by-step on creating the same image. Should be pretty beneficial if you don't already know how to do that. So let's go ahead now and just start. Let me toggle over here with our starting image. And you can see over here in the Layers panel, it's just a flattened bitmap on its own layer. And we want to create the selection around here. And obviously in this example, we're working with the bitmap selection tool. So most likely the Lasso tool would be our best choice in this example. But before we select the Lasso tool, let's just take a look at this image. Let's just say for a moment that we wanted to select the background. Say that was the purpose of this project, was not to select the hat, but just to select the background to delete it so we can take this woman and put her on a different image, put her over a different background. Well, for that we would use the wand tool. And the reason we'd use the wand tool is if we look at this background, even though there are a couple different colors and it does have some texture in it, for the most part, it's a rather monochromatic background. We have the sand down here, which is just an off-white, the sea, or maybe that's the sky, but it's just a light blue, and there's a slight gradation between the two where they meet, but overall, it's a pretty monochromatic background. So with the Magic Wand tool, and say just a tolerance of around 19, edges at anti-alias, we can start shift-clicking in here and creating a rather quick and good selection, get in here, around this background. We have enough of this background selected that we could delete it. You can see right here we'd need to use the Lasso tool to clean this little area up over her shoulder. But for the most part, this would be a real easy image to delete if we were trying to just select the whole woman and delete the background and put her somewhere else. Click to deselect. But we don't want to select the background. And I did that example for a reason. What we want to do is select the hat. So we could use the Lasso tool or one of the marquee tools, and rather than go for the detailed selection right off the bat, we can create a real loose selection. And remember, you can now hold down the space bar while you hold your left mouse button down to move the selection. Excellent new feature in Fireworks. So there we go. We'll just put that loose selection around her hat. And now, using that same technique we just used with the wand, so click W, and again, we're still on the tolerance of 19 and anti-alias edge. Rather than holding down the Shift key like we did before to add to the selection, we can hold the Alt key down, and we've already obviously talked about adding and subtracting selections, and we can start selecting by clicking in here to subtract the selection. So, click that up there, down here, and what was that? 4 clicks, 4.5 clicks. We were able to create a detailed selection around the outside of her hat by combining the selection tools. And even someone who creates a lot of selections with the Lasso tool would still have a pretty rough time, or at least it would take up some considerable time, certainly a lot longer than what it took us to create that selection around the outside of the hat. So now we're ready to go in here and use the Lasso tool to clean up the selection around her face. So let's go ahead and zoom in, Control 2 or Command 2 on the Mac. With the lasso tool selected, hold down your Alt key because we want to subtract from this selection. We want to subtract from this area right here. And I'm just going to hold the Alt key down and hold my mouse button down and draw a selection around her hat and where it meets her face. Obviously not getting a very good selection the first time. That's okay. Now, let me just click the Z key to zoom in one more time. Hold the L key again, and now I'm just going to clean this selection up. So again, the edge is set to anti-alias, holding down the Shift key to come right here around this bottom part of her hat. Looks like I probably missed a little bit of it. But that never matters because we can always go back. There we go. Holding down the Shift key again. And in some ways, this is a rather tricky selection because her hair is so close to the color of her hat. And while that can make it difficult sometimes, it can also work to your favor because the lines of separation aren't that clear. Sometimes you can use that to your advantage to not have to worry about getting it totally perfect because no one can really tell where the separation is. And the toughest part is going to be over here where the hat really matches her hair. Still holding down the Shift key. Let me zoom in one more time right here. Click L again, and just obviously memorizing these shortcuts makes such a considerable difference when you're working with these selections. Holding down the Shift key, I'm just going to separate these pixels, and this is where the anti-alias really helps us. It's going to go between the light and the dark, and create that selection. May want to come down a little bit. Okay. Get that right there. Okay, I thought I got it. Maybe that is too far down. Bet you it is. I'm going to create just a little bit larger selection, just a bad selection so I can start over right there. And sometimes rather than really trying to get in there, just creating a really awful selection and then letting yourself start over is a better way to go. Sometimes you can just tell yourself that you meant to do that and really didn't mean to do it. Holding down the Shift key, coming down over here. I might want to separate her hair a little bit more right here. The shadow between the hat. Coming down around. And we might need to zoom out to preview this a little better. Yeah, that part right there we'll take a look at. And okay. So Control 1 or Command 1. There's my selection. Looks pretty good, but we won't really know how good a selection it is until we've copied it and then colorized it to modify it. So at this point, we're going to save our selection. And obviously, we talked about that earlier, and this couldn't be a better example, a better time to save a selection. We just spent a few minutes creating this selection, and we don't really know how good a selection it is at this point. So by saving the selection, we can always return to this point and continue modifying the selection. And obviously what's great about it is if we save the document, we can go ahead and close out of Fireworks, close out of our computer, shut it down. Next time we restart the program and bring open this image, the last selection we saved will be available. So just right-click inside of her hat and choose Save Selection. And obviously you could reach that by going up to Select and choosing Save Bitmap Selection. Okay, at this point I'm going to copy the selection, so Control C or Command C on the Mac, Control D to deselect, and let's go ahead and just click on layer 2, or if you don't have layer 2 yet, just go ahead and create it. Control V to paste, and we pasted that copied hat on top of it. Let me lock this bottom layer so we don't select it, and I'm just going to turn off the visibility on this bottom hat for a moment to take a look at it. Okay, that's what the hat looks like. We don't really know how this is going to look until we colorize it and then toggle the visibility with the hat with the object below. So I'll turn that visibility back on with this top hat selected because the bottom one's locked. Bring open our effects. They're down here on the right-hand side. Choose Adjust Color and Hue and Saturation. First thing you want to do always is check the Colorize button. Drag this hue all the way over for red. And there's my hat. So click OK. Well, it looks really good. I can see maybe this area right here might need to be touched up. Zoom in. Toggle it on and off. Zoom out. Actually, that's a really good selection. I think we're going to keep that selection. But let's just say for a moment that this selection was really awful. Say it just didn't work out. We had real glaring holes in it. You could see outside of her hat. We would want to just delete this layer. Let's just say we're just deleting it, unlock the bottom layer, and now we don't have any selection, but we save the selection, so we can bring that selection back. So if we just double-click the image to enter bitmap mode again, right-click and choose Restore Selection. And there's our hat selection again. So now if we had to go in here and make any modifications, we can select the Lasso tool, whatever tool we're using, make those changes, zoom out, then we'd save the selection again. Okay, now let's copy this again, so Control-C and then deselect. But I just wanted to reinforce how powerful saving the selection is, especially with your more complicated selections and ones that you spend some considerable time with, so that you can always have that ability to go back there and make any corrections, or just to bring it back up, say that we created our selection, we liked it, we finished off the image, but we needed more copies of the hat. Say we wanted to have several different colors of it. Well, we don't have to recreate that if we save the selection. So let's go ahead and go back to layer 2 and paste that selection back on. And I'm going to lock this bottom layer again. Well, let's go ahead and change the color of it again, change the saturation. So in the effects panel, adjust color, hue saturation, and it remembers the last setting. There it is. Now all we need to do is to duplicate this layer a couple of times. We want to create multiple copies of it. Well, we already created it once, so let's go ahead and just duplicate this layer. So in the layer options, duplicate layer, 2 times. I don't care where it goes, before or after, just click OK. You can see over here in the layers panel, we have 2 new thumbnails, but all of these thumbnails have the red hat on them. That's because it not only duplicates the object, but it also duplicates the live effect. So if we click on this, we'll automatically select the topmost object or the topmost layer. And let's go ahead and just keep the red. The red's fine for that one. Turn off the visibility, click it again, and we select the next one in the stacking order. You can see down here in the bottom right-hand corner that the hue saturation was copied with it. So if I double-click that, brings open the red. Let's go ahead and just make this a green. Might be a little too green. There we go. Click OK. You can see the green right here in the thumbnail. Let's turn off the visibility right here. Click it one more time, selects the next one in the stacking order because the visibility is turned off of the 2 objects above it. Double-click hue saturation, and we can go for a purple, or maybe a blue. Why not a blue? Click OK. So at this point, we have a great way to be able to preview our model here in 3 different colored hats, 4 different colored hats. We have the default color. We could just click on the visibility of the next layer. There's the blue, there's the green, and there's the red. So you can have a pretty good idea on how to use those selections. And like I say, we could have our client preview what this looks like just by turning the visibility on, or we can preview to see the best setting by just clicking on the visibility in each of the layers. But obviously, setting it up as an interactive image is a much cooler effect. And that's what we'll obviously work on later on. But you can see how powerful a couple different techniques are that we used here. We created a selection, we saved the selection, and then we modified it. If we didn't like the selection, we just went back and we keep on editing it by restoring that selection and making whatever changes are necessary. Hope this was helpful. Be sure to compare this approach with the vector mask approach later on. And again, if you're interested in the swap image tutorial, check that one out for creating the interactivity. Hope this was a helpful lesson, and we'll see you in the next lesson.